Hello, Painting One. I'm going to walk through this color theory worksheet with you. To get set up, you need the worksheets that are 3 pages. So we have the color wheel, we have some value scales, and some spheres and textures. We're going to start with just the first one. And you can write your name up here. And we are ready to go. So I have my watercolor palette. There is a brush in there, or you might be using a different palette, which is just fine. These brushes aren't that great, so I have a few of my own. I have some water and a paper towel to dry off. The other thing that would be helpful is any kind of plastic surface for a palette that you can mix your colors in, because of course we're going to be mixing all the time on this one. I'm going to start with just my original colors here, and the only time that you're not going to mix is just with like your primary and secondary. You don't need to mix, but everything else you're going to be mixing on your own palette. You can always wash your palette off. It doesn't dry like acrylic. It's really easy to wash, so you can use it over and over. You could just use like a paper plate or anything you have at home too. So I'm just going to go ahead and start. I'm going to get a little bit of red for my primary. Now this does not tell you which primary color is in what circle, so you can start with literally any color, but then the direction matters. So if you go around this way and it goes red, orange, then you have to continue with that rainbow. If you go the other way, that's okay too, but you have to have your colors in the right order. Every time I dip into a new color, I'm washing my brush. I do not want to contaminate my palette, so every time that I'm picking up color, this is my secondary, I'm just going to go right into the secondary squares. Every time I'm picking up my color, my brush is washed and clean. Get some yellow. Obviously, red and yellow make orange, but since we have a palette that already has orange, you can kind of cheat a little bit. If you were in school, I would probably make you make your secondary colors too, but that's okay. All right, now instead of just going around the entire thing, I'm going to show you how to make these tertiary or intermediate colors by mixing the two. So this is where the palette comes in. I'm going to grab some red. I'm going to think to myself, what is the more powerful color? I'm going to put it in my palette there. Because red is stronger than yellow, or orange, I might need a little bit more orange. What I'm looking for is a color that I can't tell if it's more orange or more red. And then I know it's a good intermediate color. I think that's pretty good. I'll put it down. If you put it on the page and it doesn't look quite right, you can remix and see if you can match it a little bit better. So there's a good red-orange. We always say the primary color first, so we never say orange-red. We always say red-orange, yellow-orange. Always primary color first and then secondary when you say the name of the color. So I'm going to mix my orange and my yellow. So I'm going to grab some orange. Not very much because I know it's going to overpower the yellow quite a bit. So I'm trying to get a good intermediate yellow-orange that's not too orange and not too yellow. Now looking at it just here, I see that it needs a little bit more yellow. So I'm going to always wash my brush, just get in the habit of washing, washing, washing. There we go. That looks like a little bit more in between those two colors. Good craftsmanship filling in. I'm not super messy. I'm practicing kind of sharp edges on those. And then you're going to work your way all the way around. Now I'm going to show you the second half of this page as well. So it says mix the 3 primary colors, or put in the 3 primary. You could actually do this bottom half while you do this one to make it a little bit faster. So as you're painting in the red, you paint it down here as well. And then it says paint the pairs of complementary colors, so I know I need red in one of these. If you need to reference any kind of information about the color wheel, that's available on Schoology. Now I could go in and say, okay, I need a green. I'm going to use green a couple times because, so this would be blue, green is in the middle, the secondary color. I picked green because I just put a red down and I know that green is its complement. If you're not quite sure how this should look, there's also a finished worksheet available on Schoology as well. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up on my own because I think you get the idea of how that goes. Neutrals are just black, gray, brown, which you'll find right in your palette. All right, so this is the second page and it's a lot of value scales. If I need to clean out my palette, no big deal. You can just wipe it out with a paper towel or get some water on it and you have a new palette. All right, so the first one is mix a black with white to create the complete value scale. So we have a black and we have a white. We just need to be thoughtful about how much of each to put into our value scale. I'm gonna just go ahead and do pure black. We know that black is like a lot stronger than white.
Hello, amazing Minnetonka staff. This is Jennifer Smazel, assistant principal. There are a few cars still in the bus lane, 4 cars in the bus lane. If you could please move, our buses will soon be here. So, staff, thanks for an awesome day yesterday. We're gearing up for another one today. Freshmen will begin arriving at 12:30. We see them coming right down. Secondly, please give everybody in your first hour class 5 masks. 5 masks to every student in your first hour class. We don't need to pass out masks beyond first hour, so just first hour. Thanks for everything and have a great day.
Well, that announcement was unfortunate, but that's okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the tiniest amount of white into my black and work my way across from dark to light. So I'm actually kind of getting some black off my brush because I didn't want all of that on. And I'm going to get a little bit of white to make the next kind of gray color. Now they might bleed into each other because they're both wet. If you just hate that because you're a perfectionist, you might want to let one dry and do the next, but I think it's okay for me, so putting a little bit more white in. I'm gonna do... Now, if you ever paint one square next to it and it doesn't look quite too different enough and you need it more different, just go ahead and add more white in. Gotta pick some more up here. Going all the way across. My last 3 look a little too similar, so I'm gonna grab some gray and kind of even it out a little bit. I think that's a pretty good value scale. The next one is using one base color to create tints. So we're actually going to do the same process, but instead of black, you're going to choose a different color. So maybe blue and then adding white as you go across. The next one is creating shades. So maybe choose the same base color, so blue, and you're going to add black as you go across gradually. It should be a gradual step. Every square is different than the last, but it's not too drastic of a difference. The next one is mix 2 analogous colors to create an intermediate color. So I'm going to choose a primary and a secondary. So let's do green and blue. I'm just going to start by putting green in there and add some to my palette. I am going to, oh, that was purple, threw me off there. I'm going to add some blue to the other side. And then I'm going to slowly mix them together so that by the time I'm in the middle of my value scale, it's an even amount of both. So I'm going to mix a tiny bit of green into my blue. It should kind of look more teal as it goes across. A little bit more green. If it's not a big enough shift, then you need to add some more. About 50-50 in the middle. A little bit more green. Not sure if that's a big enough difference. I need a little more green. So it should be a subtle shift all the way across, mixing evenly in the middle. The last one is two complementary colors. So you're going to pick those sports teams. So either you can do the Vikings, you can do the Wild, red and green. I'm going to do Vikings. So I'm going to do purple or violet on this side. Yellow is going to be overpowered really fast. So you got to be careful about how much yellow you add to your violet. And they are going to look very pukey. Because there's such a contrast, it might be a little too yellow. I'm being overly cautious on my amount of yellow. Got a little too dark, so I skipped one because I knew I was too dark. Need a little bit more. And it should look, oh, I don't know, about like baby poop in the middle. Nice neutral. Now these might make you not want to mix complementary just because they look a little bit pukish right now, but actually complementary colors are a great way to tone down a color without using black. So a lot of times when students want a darker color, they reach for the black right away, and that can actually make it look a little bit more elementary. And if you want some richer, deeper tones, you actually mix the complement, and that's a more effective way. All right, so hopefully you kind of get the gist of the rest of those. I think I did the hardest ones. And the last worksheet we have is creating a sphere. Now for the sphere, I would recommend Googling watercolor sphere or painted sphere since it is a little bit challenging. This one you are only using black and white, and this one you're using a base color to tint and shade. Your goal is to create three-dimensional form, which is actually a lot more challenging than it looks. I have told you where the light source is coming from, so you should see the light right about here, and then a darker curve around the edge. So I'm going to start with the black and white. I'm going to put some white right where the light is going to hit, right about there. And I'm going to slowly get a little bit darker. I'm kind of making kind of an oval. I'm being real cautious about how much dark I use. Right about there. If I want to blend those two colors together a little bit better, I'm going to wash my brush off, get a little bit of water off of it, and then come in and start to kind of mix them together so it's a little bit more of a subtle value. I want to maintain just pure white right where that light hits, but I also want my value shift to be subtly from white to dark. If it's too drastic of shift, then it's not going to look three-dimensional. Ooh, I have some bleeding right here. If you have some bleeding, you just get a little bit of paper towel and you touch it right to the spot that you want to suck up that pigment. And it's pretty easy to take that right off as long as it hasn't dried. The other thing that I'm really not happy with is going outside my line right there. Maybe when it gets a little bit drier, I can go with some white on top of that and try to fix it, because the minute you go outside that line, you're gonna really miss the illusion of a sphere. Kind of letting it bleed together. This is more of a wet on wet technique where you're painting wet onto wet. Anytime I want to get a little bit off of there. Oh, I got a little messy with that one. Now I'm going to take the edge of this and I'm just going to create a shadow. Let it just kind of, the watery paint to flow there for that shadow. I feel a little bit out of practice on this. I think I got a little, I would do a little bit less water. Because my black kind of is overpowering a little bit, and I would like a little bit more of a gray there, and I didn't get it. So I am going to try to fix it. I'm going to pick up a little bit more white. I'm going to put that back in. I kind of like to actually move my brush in an oval so it kind of follows that form, those contours of the form. All right, we're getting there. Sometimes you got to work back and forth on this. Make sure it blends nicely. Notice my brush strokes are kind of going in that circular contour motion. I still have that light source right there.